Quite a few pictures of old Sarkozy on the front pages as well. French President, what's his first name? What is his first name? Nicolas Sarkozy, pictured with Carla Bruni, who apparently the supermodel wife. She may be going to prison apparently as well. He was found guilty of trying to get 500,000 euros from Colonel Gaddafi. Brilliant. Ray, very good morning to you. So many great stories to talk about this morning. I guess we must start with digital ID, must we not?
Yes, once again more proof that Keir Starmer is trying to finish the job started by Tony Blair.
Yes.
This is basically Blairism 2.0 with so many of the policies that we're seeing from Starmer. And coincidentally, this has come out just literally a few days after Tony Blair's institute advocated for digital IDs. Is there a connection there? I'll leave you to
well, it seems as though everything from Peter Mandelson being appointed US ambassador to Morgan McSweeney kind of pulling the strings in Downing Street to Andy Burnham somehow making a comeback. You know, everything seems to be being played through a Tony Blair playbook, doesn't it?
His shadow looms large over the party still after all these years. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is what whenever there's a crisis in Britain, they try to bring in digital ID card, which tells you everything. Using the politics of fear. They tried it again during COVID, you'll remember?
Yeah.
Now then in the financial crisis they tried it as well. They're trying it again. Look, what I don't get is, look, I've been saying before anybody else was saying it that we need to clamp down on illegal employment in the black market. But the people who are employing people illegally aren't doing checks already.
No, of course.
Right?
They don't care, do they?
People have a national insurance number. You should be checking their ID anyway. If they're not doing it now, why are they going to do the digital? The whole point is it's a black market economy. But they don't care about these things.
Exactly. It's a bit like saying, you know, it's the same people who say we've got a war going on drugs. It's like, yeah, but you're not winning it, and people are not going to, you know, it's like going up to a drug dealer and saying, do you know what you're doing is illegal? You must stop. And they know it's illegal. They're not going to stop because they make a lot of money doing it.
If they wanted to be serious and get to tackle the issue of the underground economy, imprison people who are found to be employing people without a right to be here.
Right.
Don't just fine them, because they don't care about fines.
Right.
Put employers in prison, then you'll see things come in, right? That's what you need to do, rather than these gimmicks about ID cards. And I fear that these ID cards will be just one more stepping stone to a China-style social credit system. Because, of course, you know, we're told, oh, it's just going to have your picture and then biometrics on there. But we're also told you're going to need to have it to access public services.
Yeah.
So, well, look at your social media postings.
Right, exactly right. And I mean, I've been listening to a lot of people talking about this, and we'll talk to Alan Miller coming up in a little while about it from the Together declaration. There's not much actual detail in what the government is planning to do, and there's an awful lot of loopholes in it. For example, they're calling it an ID card for working people, to make sure that those people who go to work are entitled to work. Well, what about the people who don't work? What about people who are on benefits, for example? Are you going to give one to those people so that they can not claim benefits if they're not entitled to them? Because there's a lot of that going on as well.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, what about people who don't have smartphones? Not everybody has a smartphone.
Right.
Not everybody wants to have a smartphone. No. What about areas where you've got very poor internet connection? You know, there are lots of parts of this country where people can't actually access the internet to download this stuff if they wanted to actually be able to use it. Well, there are so many areas
and here's
here
another area where it seems to be completely unthought through. It says it would be mandatory for everyone in Britain and designed to make it easier for employers and landlords to check a person's immigration status using a smartphone app. However, it then says the practicalities of the scheme are still unknown. This is the newspaper, and will be subject to consultation, which means that will push that way into the long grass. It then says, including on how it will work for those in the UK without a smartphone or a passport. So if you come here illegally, right, and you haven't got a passport, how are they going to give you a digital ID if they don't know who you are? For example.
They won't be. I mean, this thing is completely flawed, and we know why. It's because they weren't actually thinking about it till Tony Blair said this, and also Sarkozy said, look, one of the reasons people are coming to Britain is because there's no ID cards there. Really, is that the reason? But they've been caught on the back hoof by all of this, and so they've come out with all of this without doing any of the background work, and they're being left with egg on their face.
Yeah. Also, if the French are such experts in digital ID to stop people coming to Britain, why are they all coming to France?
Yes,
because that's where they're coming from.
That's a very good point. Exactly.
They're not coming to Britain from Eritrea.
You've just cut through the Gordian knot.
But it's true. And also, the other thing is, in terms of stopping people from accessing, you know, illegal work, how exactly do they think that's going to work out? You know, how are they going to sort of roll up into some you know, car wash in the middle of Reading and arrest a load of Romanian people, and then what are they going to do with them? Say you're not allowed to work, and then what?
Well,
do we deport them for working without an ID card? What do we do?
Yeah, well, mass deportations would be a way to obviate the need for ID cards if you just got ahead with that.
Right.
That's what I mean. There are real practical policies that could be put in place. Mass deportations, imprisoning rogue landlords, imprisoning rogue employers, rather than just basically making all of us now have one of these Gestapo-esque show me your papers society.
But this is also going to bring back memories to people of the COVID app, because apparently it's not going to be an actual physical card like a driving licence. It will be on your phone, right? So according to a sort of Q&A in the Mail, it won't be a physical card. A previous UK scheme was ultimately abandoned because it relied on a digital photograph which measures the precise distance between facial features. It is possible that a new scheme would require other biometric details such as fingerprints. Details could be cross-referenced against a central database. And I heard something chilling yesterday. There's a guy called Ivan Sampson who appears on our shows variously. He's an immigration lawyer, human rights lawyer. He actually said yesterday on Peter Cardwell's show, he said it will probably be the case, and quite rightly so, that if you don't have the right to work and you don't have the right papers, if you go to Tesco's to try and buy some food, you won't be able to.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that is terrifying.
And yeah, that's terrifying. But also, who on earth trusts our government to keep our data safe, right? We know full well how many data leaks have been around. We're already hearing about JLR and all these other cyber attacks and so forth. I don't trust the government on this. What's remarkable is, unfortunately, is that how many British people are behind this idea of ID cards. I don't think they understand the full consequences of this. We used to have faith in a lot of the British public, but still a majority of the British public would go into a lockdown again if they were told that they needed to go into a lockdown.
Of course.
And another lot are willing to give up their freedoms with ID cards, yet at the same time, 63% of the public don't trust the government to keep their data safe. So I don't know what they're talking about.
And then Starmer's going to say in a speech later on today, for too many years it's been too easy for people to come here, slip into the shadow economy and remain here illegally. And then he says it is not compassionate left-wing politics to rely on Labour that exploits foreign workers and undercuts fair wages. Well, it used to be compassionate left-wing politics not that long ago. Only a few years ago, Keir Starmer was part of a group of people stopping the government from deporting dangerous criminals and keeping them in the country so they could continue to be dangerous criminals, to wit that guy from Jamaica who ended up murdering somebody.
Yeah, the audacity of this man to basically have been one of the cheerleaders for the greatest act of harm since the Second World War with mass immigration. And what does he say? Writing in the Telegraph, he says that the party did shy away from people's concerns about immigration. Now, that is the biggest statement, the biggest understatement since Oliver Reed said, "I like a drink once in a while." Right? This is absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah, he says we got it wrong on migration. The other thing that worries me slightly about all of this, and this was put to me by Christian, it could well be another distraction, because I think I've worked out what it is that this government does. Whenever they're under pressure on a particular subject, they kind of come up with another brand new sort of initiative to try and take everybody's eyes away from Morgan McSweeney, who's been on the front pages literally for the last 4 days, particularly the Daily Mail. And so, look, hey, presto, here's an ID card. And suddenly he's off for front pages now.
Dead cat
sort
syndrome.
Of, yeah. I wonder if there's a bit of that going on.
Yeah, so we all basically have to sacrifice our liberties just to keep Morgan McSweeney in the job.
But this is how desperate they are, these people.
Well, the old adage, once a member of staff becomes the story, once an advisor becomes the story, his days are numbered. It happened with Dominic Cummings.
And that was Alistair Campbell's mantra, wasn't it? It happened to him.
And so I think Morgan McSweeney has been in the papers long enough now for his card to be forever blotted, I suspect.
Right. Now, I've got a couple of good little clips to show you here. This is Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy last night on Question Time. I wasn't able to watch it, actually, but here's what she had to say. I'm sure this will make everything a lot clearer.
How will these digital ID cards work?
Well, one of the things that we're thinking about is whether to introduce digital ID, and we think there is some merit in this. The Prime Minister will say a bit more about this tomorrow, but we think that they offer two benefits. The first is that they'll be able to make sure that people are able to prove their right to be here, to work here legally very easily, which will then help us to deal with the illegal economy and stop people being undercut at work. But we also think there might be big benefits as well for citizens. If you think about the way that the NHS app has developed in recent years, and now you're much more able to do things like make GP appointments online and access your medical records, we think there may be benefits to the general population as well.
So if you've got an NHS app that you can do all that with, why do you need a digital ID as well?
Precisely, exactly.
Doesn't make any sense, does it?
We have national insurance numbers, we have these NHS apps, we don't need it, precisely.
And then she also says there, we're thinking about this and we're possibly doing that. I think they've rushed this out. And I'm beginning to be more and more convinced that it's really just a dead cat thing to try and scare everybody and stop talking about Morgan McSweeney. I wonder if that's actually what's really going on here.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't look like they've really given it a hell of a lot of thought. Well, they clearly haven't thought through every single possibility.
They're promising to have it in place by the end of this Parliament, but it wasn't a government manifesto. It wasn't a manifesto commitment at all. It's being opposed. It's even brought Nigel Farage and Jeremy Corbyn together, united in their opposition to it for both civil liberties reasons, and also for Corbyn. He thinks it's not going to be fair for ethnic minorities, but that's rather the point, I suspect.
Well, isn't that the point? But the fact without a kind of a cogent deportation policy, which they still don't have. So far we've counted, the man with the ticker, as I was saying this week, has counted 1, 2, 3, I think now 4 people have been sent back to France, and in return we've had a family of 3 with a child come the other way. But as far as actually cracking down on deportations, unless they're going to do that, it makes no difference if they discover here's somebody who doesn't have the right to work here. So what are you going to do then? Deport them? No.
Yeah, exactly. Look, get the refugee camps open, empty all the private accommodation, put people in prison, and start mass deportations on a big scale, and you will see the change happen.
And then they won't keep coming. Yeah, they'll stay where they are. Let's have a look at what Nigel Farage has to say about digital ID.
All that digital ID will be is a means of controlling the population, of telling us what we can and can't do, of fining the innocent. And didn't we see it all when we had the pandemic, when you had to have vaccine ID to travel, to do various things? Did that stop the COVID pandemic spreading? Did it? Hell, all it did was put cost and inconvenience on everybody else. I also worry about massive data banks being held by the government, being hacked by foreign governments, by private companies, by criminals. I do not see a single benefit to the government having digital ID other than them controlling what we do, what we spend, and where we go. And we, in Reform, are wholly opposed to it in every single way.
And I think most people who are sensible will be wholly opposed to it in every single way. And we'll be talking to many of you, I'm sure, about it today. So call us 0344 499 1000. On the subject of Tony Blair, perhaps the most astonishing story about him that I've seen for a while, in addition to him pushing for digital IDs all the time, is that apparently he wants to run Gaza. I'm not joking. I mean, you'd think this was an April Fool's story. Tony Blair literally wants to spearhead a plan to end the conflict through his think tank, and he wants to offer to head an interim government in Gaza on the proviso that power would eventually be handed over to the Palestinian Authority. I mean, talk about megalomania.
And just when you thought the poor people of Gaza had suffered enough, we parachuted Tony Blair.
No, we'd rather have the IDF stalking
we
the
surrender,
streets.
we will release the hostages. Please don't give us Tony Blair. But yeah, I mean, the irony here is that the left are attacking Israel as being colonizers, and then they want to bring in a white man to rule a lot of brown people.
Yes.
I mean, if you call me old-fashioned, I'm pretty sure that's the definition of colonialism, isn't it, really?
Well, as indeed Trevor Phillips pointed out to David Lammy when he said, when you recognise Palestine, are you recognising the country that you think it to be a country, or are you only recognising it if it has certain, ministers in the government? Because if you don't recognise it with Hamas in it, then doesn't that sound a bit like colonisation? And he didn't quite understand the question.
That's precisely what it is. So he wants to rule the country for several years before handing it over. Well, I'm calling it a country. Rule Palestine for several years before handing it over to the Palestinian Authority, after the Palestinian Authority has been significantly reformed and so forth. Israel has rejected any possibility of working with the Palestinian Authority, so I don't know how it's going to go ahead. But apparently a quarter of Gazans actually favoured some form of international involvement. That was before they knew it was Tony Blair that was actually the one coming over. I mean, it's one sort of possibility here, but basically it's another form of the technocrats coming in,
Of course.
Completely undemocratic.
We know best. We'll tell you how to run your country. I mean, they tried that in Iraq, and look how that ended up. They're still fighting over what's going on in Syria and Iraq, and they tried it in Libya. How did that go? Well, it looks like half of Libya is now living here.
Yeah, just remember, he was the Middle East peace envoy. That, of course, didn't go... The track record there's not great. I don't think Iraq and Afghanistan have benefited greatly from Tony Blair's involvement there either. So,
I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? How do you get to do a job so badly in so many different places and yet still become a multi-millionaire and employable at the highest levels of government and indeed finance?
We're in the wrong industry.
How does that work? Got some very, very clever people watching and listening to this show. Steve says this: morning both. Digital ID, I can think of 740,000 reasons at least why Starmer and this pathetic government should be nowhere near it. As for the NHS app, it doesn't work. It's a distraction. As Soph says, Mike, the Starmsy digital ID is being imposed on us as part of a UN Agenda 21, the digitalisation of every human who can then be controlled. By the time people realise this is a conspiracy, the digital prison door will be shut. The frog is already part-boiled. And finally, Mackenzie, the digital ID chatter is Operation Save Starmer. One big distraction from his woes. It's never going to happen. Let's get back to Mr McSweeney. Budget tax rises and the fact that the country is going to hell in a handcart. Well, funnily enough, there's a really big piece, and we'll talk about it. We should probably take a break. We'll talk about it next. A big piece in the Mail, written by their city editor, who says that he fears there is a terrible fiscal crash coming. The worst kind of, physical collapse of this country's financial business than anybody's ever seen. And it's a very compelling piece. We'll talk a bit about that coming up. 6:21. Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:25. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. It is Friday, the 26th of September. Rafal Heydel-Mankoo is here, of course, for the New Cultural Forum and elsewhere as well. Big breaking news poll at the moment, Rafe, for you. Nigel Farage on course to be Prime Minister, according to a seat-by-seat YouGov poll, literally just published a few moments ago, based on an MRP polling projection on a 13,000 sample, which is a pretty big sample. Nigel Farage is on course, basically, to get 306 reform gains, up from the current tally of 5, which is pretty extraordinary. Basically, they're saying it looks like Reform with 311 seats, Labour 144, Lib Dem 78, Conservatives 45, SNP 37, Greens 7, Plaid 6, others 3. So basically, they've improved their position since the last one of these, which was taken in June, where it was 55 seats short of a majority. This projection suggests 306 Reform gains, which would be the biggest increase in any election in British history.
Yeah, and things are only going up. I mean, we still have a long time till the election. Things can go up or down, but this is a sign that the country is desperate for change. Politics is broken in this country. There are only basically 2 options in this country. It's reform or it's the others. Yeah. And we've tried the others. That hasn't worked. I think this country is ripe for a counter-revolution, because I always say Britain is a post-revolutionary society. We've already had a revolution. This country has changed beyond all recognition. We need a counter-revolution to get back to some normalcy and where we should be at this point.
And that's certainly what we hear every single day from our viewers, from our listeners. We've got some great messages coming in. We're going to play you some Starmer clips in a minute, just to keep you all amused for the first part of the Friday morning scenario. Regarding ID cards, says Mark, this was not in their manifesto. I would like to know when this idea was thought up. It seems this happened overnight. Well, the thing is, they've always been talking about it, but, again, with many of these Labour announcements, there's no real meat on the bones. It's almost as if they're trying to get sort of approval from the country in principle. It's like when you go and get a mortgage in principle, and then they see the house and go, oh, actually, we're not going to give you the money for that house.
They haven't been briefed by Tony Blair's Institute yet, so they don't know what to say.
No. Beck says this. Good morning, Mike. Margaret, currently in Tunisia. What is this so-called government up to? Digital ID under the mask of trying to stop illegal migration. Do they think we're stupid? I've already signed a petition against it. Hundreds of thousands of people have, of course. And then this one from somebody called, who are we? Mel. Good morning. With all the cyber attacks that are happening at the moment, is Keir Starmer and the government going to give a 100% guarantee that this won't happen with ID software? Already we have share codes to check non-British citizens have the right to work and rent in this country, so there are already things in place. They just want to control us and what we do. I think that's right. There's no real evidence that this is going to happen, actually, by the way, as well, because despite all of the noises they're making, it doesn't look to me like they've got it actually ready to go, anywhere near ready to go. Let's have a look at what Starmer's been up to, though. He's been putting out some tweets, because obviously leading up to Labour Party conference kicking off on Sunday, they've got more problems in Labour government than they've ever had. They're all fighting like rats in a sack, and they've all got it in for Keir Starmer. Here's what he says about patriotic duty.
We're up against those that feed off the politics of grievance. Ours is a mission for what I consider to be the Britain of decent, reasonable, compassionate, tolerant people. The vast majority of people in this country are. Our mission is the triumph of national renewal over the division and decline that is offered. And that is our patriotic responsibility.
He keeps talking about renewal. Nobody knows what that means. Do you have any idea what he means by that?
No, but looking at that, I couldn't tell whether that was AI or not. He's so robotic when he speaks. I literally, I thought that was actually an AI video.
Do you know, we played a clip earlier in the week, and this is of him thanking the police at Chequers after Donald Trump's visit last week, and he talks to them through a walkie-talkie, and the walkie-talkie Keir Starmer actually sounds more normal than the actual Keir Starmer. Here he is talking about splashing the cash in the regions, which he's going to do apparently to save us all.
Today,
Their money's our money. That he's giving away. Where's he finding all this money from? It's the same old Labour, isn't it? Bribe people so that they won't vote for another party. He's basically targeting all the places where reform are likely to do very well, and he's trying to give them money which will somehow rescue them from voting reform, which won't work.
I think it's called bribery.
It is called bribery,
That's
yeah.
basically what's happening here.
Yeah.
But of course, he hasn't. Nowhere did he say how much money was being given to them either.
Right.
Which I think.
Or exactly what they can spend it on, and where he's going to get the money from.
Is it £10 coming over? I don't know. How
it's
much
insane. And here he is trying to be a bit more specific about regions.
Everybody has pride of place in where they live. They want the very best for where they live. And real ambition. What they really want is a government that comes up alongside that, understands that pride and that ambition. And that's what we're doing. The funding is significant and it's really important, but the way in which the money will be used is hugely important, because it's not Whitehall dictating what's going to be done. It's people with skin in the game, local panels, and they will know their patch, they will know the thing that will make a real difference in their community, and we're empowering them to take those decisions.
As somebody pointed out today on Twitter, for a guy who's introducing a nationwide digital ID identification sort of scenario, it's a bit rich saying he's giving power back to communities. He seems to be taking it from communities and making it centralised in some kind of digital ID package so that you can't do anything unless you qualify.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm all in favour of localised people having a say in what they do, but you're quite right. This is a hugely centralising government, so it's quite an oxymoron, an anomaly what they're.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's have a quick look just at what this piece is in the Mail that I was talking about, and it's from the city editor, who's actually been around for a long time and knows a thing or two about the state of our nation. And he says, Alex Brummer, his name is, in 50 years as a city writer, I've almost never felt so worried. A terrible crash is coming. Warning signs are absolutely everywhere. And he said last week something extraordinary happened to the New York Stock Exchange. A company called Brera Holdings, which owns stakes in football clubs, announced an intention to buy cryptocurrency tokens. And he says this is not just remarkable because of the fact that they own such big stakes in places like Liverpool or Real Madrid, but they also own stakes in Mongolian league clubs, North Macedonian clubs, Mozambican clubs. So the whole sort of international financial market is changing before our very eyes. We appear to be sort of sitting rather like sort of antediluvian people from the 17th century.
What he's saying is essentially that all markets around the world actually are now speculating quite rashly without any actual research. They're pouring money into completely unknown things. OpenAI, shares and various things that are happening right now. And he quotes John Kenneth Galbraith, the great economist who chronicled the Great Depression, who coined a term called bezel. And when really respectable organisations start bezeling, start basically investing in the complete unknowns, huge sums of money, that's usually a sign that everyone thinks, oh, things can only get better, and that can only work for so long. And he cites the fact that, you know, GDP, the government debt ratio is close to 100% of GDP here. In France, it's 114%. In America, it's 140%. He says rising unemployment, as we have now, is a classic sign of an impending recession.
It's a sort of new version of the subprime mortgage market, isn't it?
But gold has hit a record high. Bitcoin is just below its all-time record high. The Dow Jones, Nasdaq, Nikkei in Japan, they're close to all their peaks. These are all the warning signs, he says, of an impending calamity coming.
Yes, and another story, I think, which kind of sums up where we are in this country, which is on page 10, I think, of the Mail, all about the benefits business. Because, again, talking of digital IDs, you know, how about a digital ID card to make sure that people who get benefits actually are entitled to them? Benefits Britain, it says, 36 million people get more from the benefits business in this country than they pay in tax. 36 million. It's outrageous.
This is beyond belief. I mean, I knew things were bad. This makes a crash even more likely, if you ask me, because the fact is, more than half of the people in this country are receiving benefits paid for by less than half of the people in this country. You know, and we are the sick man of the G7. You know, 7% of the British workforce is out of work due to long-term illness. That's higher in any country, and Japan, it's twice the number in Japan. Now, Japan has the world's oldest population, and yet they have fewer people on benefits than we have in this country.
Because we've got this stupid system of universal credit and sort of, you know, what they used to call tax credits, where people who are working get their wages topped up by the government. It's an insane scheme. Started, I think, by Gordon Brown.
And at the same time, of course, the government's ridiculous economic policies are driving even more rich people out of this country. Taxpayers are fleeing the country just at the time when we need them here, because we cannot carry on with this Ponzi scheme. Look, the Centre for Social Justice think tank showed that 650,000 people are claiming personal independence payments for anxiety and mood disorders.
We saw this yesterday. I think 250 people extra per day are claiming that. Unbelievable.
It's making me anxious read all of this. Maybe I should get a PIP payment.
It is incredible, isn't it? This from Rob in Middlesex. I work in insurance and work in the renewals department. Starmer talks about renewal, but all it means is they want to continue what they're doing. He's making it sound like they're going to make change and move to something new. It's complete doublespeak. Very good point. One from EC, Eddie from Preston. That first clip from Starmer, that sad song in the background, makes me just want to lock myself in my wardrobe and cry. He's not very good at being uplifting or enthusiastic. He is also a rubbish speaker. He really is. And Sean says, I don't want any government to come up alongside me. I'm not particularly proud of my region. It's a bit of a hellhole these days, to be honest. And he's in a place called Bridlington. And one here from someone who doesn't give a name. Another stupid idea, ID cards. We already have something called a national insurance number. All employers must only hire people who have a valid NI number. It's their responsibility. And that's right. You know, this idea that somehow a new digital ID on a phone, particularly if you're trying to stop people coming here illegally on small boats, they're throwing their phones in the sea, right? So you give them a new phone, and then you ask them who they are and where they're coming from, without any idea of who they are or where they're coming from, because you can't check a database with Interpol, because we don't do that anymore. You can take their fingerprints and you can give them a new identity, and then they can be told anything you like. I mean, it makes no sense at all.
No, it's complete nonsense.
It's complete and utter rubbish. Let's get a voice note from Belinda.
Morning, Mike. Belinda here. Great show. Morning, Rafe. Yeah, about these digital ID cards, why are they calling it a Brit card? It sounds like a blimmin' rail pass. I mean, surely they should be giving everybody who isn't British this card and just call it an ID card. Then you'll find out who's supposed to be here, who isn't supposed to be here. Don't know how they're going to do it. You can't force somebody to have this card, you know, and if you've come over on a boat and you've chucked your ID in, then how can you can't even start to apply for this. It's absolutely ridiculous.
The whole thing is absolutely ridiculous. This from Luke in Stafford. Morning, Mike. I think the British public can play the government at their own game here. Article 8 of the Human Rights Act allows people a private life, and that includes correspondence, so every person will be entitled to invoke that act with ID cards. So therefore, they would have to leave the Human Rights Act, which in itself solves the problem, but surely two-tier should know that. What a plank. I mean, I think that's a good point. I'll raise this actually with our friends from the Together Declaration, Alan Miller, because he will probably be all over this. I imagine he'll know what the legalities are. Surely they cannot impose some kind of restriction on you in terms of what your movements are, in terms of what you spend your money on, in terms of what public services you access. They can't do that, can they?
Well, we saw in Canada that they absolutely can.
Yes, but they ended up, I think, having to reverse that, didn't they? Because they only did it under the sort of COVID emergency Act.
Under the Emergency Powers Act,
right.
Yes. But I mean, look, I'm really quite serious. I think we are sleepwalking into a Chinese social credit system, you know. For viewers at home, essentially, if you want to get a mortgage, even if you want to put petrol in your car, you could be at a point now where you have to scan your card,
yes.
and if you're deemed not to have enough social credit in the bank,
or,
so
you know,
speak,
or they decide that
denied.
You've actually been travelling too far this month, so actually, no, we can't give you any more petrol because, you know, you're ruining the environment, so you just have to stay in the house or get a bus.
Look, just this week we've had new powers granted to HMRC to go directly into your bank account and take money out directly, right? That used to be a sacrosanct thing, your bank account. Right. So, look, anything is possible with this government.
It really is. It's quite extraordinary and quite ridiculous. Now, it's Friday, so we normally like to play you a few gaffes. I mean, we've already technically played you 3 gaffes by Keir Starmer, because that's what all of his videos are. But here's one from Steve Reed, who's now the Secretary of State for Housing.
So many communities have felt for decades powerless to do anything about what they see as the decline of their town centre or their local high street. They've seen a proliferation of vape shops, betting shops, dodgy barbers that don't seem to be cutting anybody's hair, closed shops, pubs closing down like this beautiful pub I'm in today, and they want to do something about it, but nothing has worked. So what we're announcing today is the powers going into the hands of local people so that they can take back pride in their own local area.
Technically speaking, that's not the gaffe we were looking for. However, it sort of is a gaffe because he's standing in a pub, right? And the one thing that Rachel Reeves has managed to do since she's been Chancellor is shut down, I think it's about one pub every single day since she's been in, because of the national insurance increases, because of the rise in the cost of energy, because of the rise in the cost of beer and all sorts of other, wholesale goods, because of the included rise in national insurance. And so they've been shutting pubs down. Now they're saying they're going to campaign to keep them open.
Yeah, and of course, with the new employment rights bill, they're going to basically have banter police in those pubs as well, monitoring your free speech.
Oh, so if you upset the bartender, you could be hauled out and beaten up with a rubber truncheon and put in the back of a paddy wagon. I mean, it's incredible, isn't it, how quickly this country has become where we are now. I find it really quite shocking. But listen, there is more to be told. There are more news stories to do. There's stories that we will absolutely have you gasping for. One here from The Times, which says they're going to have mandatory reading ages at 13. They're going to start examining people at 13 to see if they can read properly. Incredible. We'll tell you the story of an illegal migrant who pretended to be a child who turned out to be 23. And we'll also tell you what the latest is on this Morgan McSweeney story. Apparently, he took a secret donation of £50,000 on the very day that he was told by the Electoral Commission to declare it. And he didn't declare it. Didn't declare it for 3 years. This is Talk. Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:43. This from Robert. He says, morning guys, just a quick question. Would digital ID have prevented Starmer and McSweeney from pocketing over £700,000 in campaign funds, asking for a friend before Plod storms my house with armed response, K9 and circling helicopters for tweeting? Yeah, I know, just in case. One from Lee, who says, who says, morning Mike, regarding IDs, people are just not thinking this through. One of the benefits of digital ID is they allow government to pre-populate your tax return, meaning they have full access to your bank account. How soon before they take tax directly from your account? This must be resisted at all costs. I think all of these things are very possibly true. And shouldn't we be detaining and documenting the migrants, says Glenn, rather than documenting and watching our own British citizens? Well, that would make sense, wouldn't it?
There's a novel idea.
I know, absolutely right. Let's just have a quick look at what the latest is on the McSweeney front, because we're saying that some of this stuff might be a distraction from the McSweeney scandal, because as of yesterday, there's still an awful lot of questions that need to be asked by the Electoral Commission and the Parliamentary Standards Authority, not to mention the police. But a fascinating development today. They say Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff hid a £50,000 donation on the very day he was told he had a legal duty to declare the funding of his organisation. And he didn't declare it that day, and he didn't declare it the next day. He didn't declare it for 3 years.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable. It was the Electoral Commission wrote to him and said he's required by law to report any donation over £7,500, and that same day he accepted £50,000 donation, and it only came out.
Didn't tell them.
It was a year after he left that this actually came out. I mean, we need to have need to have an investigation by the Electoral Commission into all of this, because he was also twice warned by the Electoral Commission that he needed to actually reveal this, and he's even claiming to have had a conversation with the Electoral Commission, and the Electoral Commission said we have no evidence of this conversation in 2018 in which he claims he didn't have to do it. But it also comes, there's even another revelation here, that Morgan McSweeney failed to declare that a lobbyist had given him a hospitality ticket to a football match during the height of Freebiegate last year. So there you are, middle of Freebiegate, when all of the glasses and suits and there he's accepting a ticket to at least his political instinct and acumen clearly is lacking. We know how unpopular he is with Labour Party backbenchers because of how badly Labour's doing in the polls. As we said earlier, once the advisor becomes the story, his time is numbered. And I would say his time certainly is.
I would say his time is numbered, and I would say that conversation was probably had yesterday, because I was speculating yesterday that he would go before conference, because otherwise all that people will be talking about during Labour Party conference this weekend will be Morgan McSweeney and what they're going to do about him. And I think they came up with this strategy to do the ID card, because here's another interesting development. Dan Hodges, who has been, snapping at Morgan McSweeney's heels pretty much for the last 7 days, he's found out that basically Labour Together, which is the group that collected all this money, has been the sole guide, if you like, in terms of ideology for this government. And it's, in fact, he's suggesting that Labour Together were the people that first floated the idea of a brick card back in June. it was Labour Together's idea. So either the government read the policy document and decided to introduce a fundamental national policy change in less than 2 months, or, says Dan Hodges, Downing Street is still so close to Labour Together, it's using them to fly policy.
Yeah, no, Labour Together's fingerprints
the whole thing stinks.
Are all over this government, and they're all over Keir Starmer, of course,
Yeah.
because they were the ones who orchestrated. They had him portraying himself as a Corbynista to become head of the party.
Yeah.
Once he's head of the party, he changes his thing again. We don't actually know what Starmer actually believes, because it seems as if Labour Together are the ones dictating what happens.
He believes whatever apparently McSweeney tells
Yeah,
him
well, that's
to
what I
believe.
mean, precisely.
You know, that's it. And then on page 7 of the Mail, I quite like this, Andy Burnham, who is, for all the world, dressed like he's a member of the Chinese Communist Party already. He's wearing this kind of strange Maoist jacket on page 7. Here he is on page 7 of the Mail, if you can see it. He looks like he's in New Order, but also it looks like he could be wearing something that's provided by the Chinese Communist Party. There he is there. And he's a very strange character, isn't he, Andy Burnham? Because he keeps saying, oh, I'm not interested in being the Prime Minister, but everybody keeps asking me to challenge Keir Starmer. He's got his face on the New Statesman cover, which somebody said yesterday is going to be transferred all over. It's going to be free copies all over Labour Party conference. So his face is going to be front and centre. He's triggered a Labour civil war, it says here, after Keir Starmer likened him to Liz Truss, apparently, and several other sort of members of the cabinet have basically told him to stick to his local Mancunian ways and not come anywhere near London and not come anywhere near Downing Street. Rachel Reeves said, I know that Andy is focused on delivering change in Greater Manchester. So they've got it out, they've got it in for him, I think.
Oh yes, well, you know, once you've got your party leader comparing you to Liz Truss, I think you know full well. And of course, the NEC has to. And basically, what we know is that all of Starmer's supporters are going to try their best to block Andy Burnham getting a seat in Parliament.
Right.
To get a seat in Parliament, you need to be approved by the NEC, which is the governing body of the Labour Party. They are square behind Starmer, and they said they don't think that it's suitable for him to actually become an MP. So that's going to create even more division between the two wings of the Labour Party if Burnham's backbenchers can see him being thwarted openly by Starmer.
Absolutely,
but of course, also the bond markets, you know, are worried about this as well. Just the idea of Burnham coming into power has already led to another 0.5% rise in the cost of borrowing on gilt yields, and the markets will be spooked because he seems inordinately naive when it comes to the economy.
Well, they all are, aren't they? I mean, he wants to put on a wealth tax, he wants to put income tax up to 50% rate. I mean, the guy is literally, you know, a walking member of the Chinese Communist Party. Let's see what's coming up in the next section of the show. We'll bring you more details of that story about Andy Burnham. Also, we'll tell you more about the illegal migrant, and we'll also tell you about another additional amount of money that old Red Ed Miliband wants to put on your energy bill. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note from Hev.
These IDs, you know, that's going to cost how much? I'm just sort of thinking, well, why don't they just detain these people when they come across? If they're illegal, they're illegal. If they've entered the country illegally, that means they've broken the law, so detain them. And then we won't have an issue, will we? Just spend the money on razor wire so that, you know, we can keep them all in a camp, throw in a couple of tents and let them get on with it. I'm just sick of this whole bloody thing.
I don't blame you, Hev. I think we all are. We've got lots more to do. We'll play you that gaff from Steve Reed, which I think we've finally found. Rafal Heydel-Mankoo is here. Back after this. Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Rafal Heydel-Mankoo is here. Natasha says, morning, Mike. Digital ID for illegal migrants won't make any difference because they don't do legal jobs. They just work in the underground economy, so completely pointless. Well, as I said before, it's a bit like the war on drugs people who go, well, we're going to stop the drugs coming into the country, and, you know, it's illegal to import them, and so therefore people won't do it anymore. And you go, well, actually, that's why they do it, funnily enough. Rafe, you've spotted one in the Telegraph you want to tell us about that.
This beggars belief. Page 3 of the Telegraph. RAF spam busters win the right to wear vegan flight suits, right? So in America, DI is in full reverse. Complete war on woke in the American military. Over here, the Ministry of Defence's vegan and vegetarian network, which exists, they are wanting to stamp out animal products. And the RAF say, yes, of course you can, because as RAF personnel, you have the option to replace clothing in line with your own morals and values. Now, this is at the same time that we're trying to go to war with Russia, talking about, existential crisis to Europe, and we're worrying about whether people are wearing leather shoes or not, and you just got to wonder, if you're a vegan soldier, how are you going to feel when you've got to bayonet the opposition in the stomach? Are you going to be able to actually physically attack somebody if you have this idea? And, we're being laughed at by our enemies.
When you're getting your feet blown off, I don't think you care what kind of shoes you're wearing.
Can you imagine the Russians? There was a time in war when you'd see the Gurkhas running towards you. Yeah. It would instill fear. Right. If you've got the vegans come, dancing over towards you, I just don't know. Well, we're going to become a laughing stock around the world if we can.
They've got a beret which is non-wool, right? I imagine, actually, to be serious for a moment, the thing about a wool beret is that it breathes, and if you're actually in a hot place, you're not going to get as sweaty and hot. If you're wearing something which is artificial, I'm afraid that's not going to be so good. Then you get boots made from recycled Action Man dolls.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Seriously, these people are a joke, aren't they? It's really bloody embarrassing. Absolutely awful. A couple of other stories. Red Ed adds another £90 to your bill. It's page 6 of The Sun. This is apparently the latest from Ed Miliband, who keeps popping up. Do you know he was in New York the other day? He decided to go to the UN for no particular reason, because I guess he was trying to get his air miles up. But according to this piece in The Sun, his drive to net zero could see yet another £90 being added to your bill. Electricity charges will soar due to increased investment required in networks as part of the energy transition. Again, the energy transition that nobody asked for.
Yeah, and this follows on from a story from last week we were discussing, where there was even more money being added, I think another £200 because of the renewable subsidies that we're all paying here. Now, the reason this is important, apart from, of course, hitting you in the pocket, is that Ed Miliband actually pledged, he promised to cut your energy bills by £300, but now they're going to be almost £200 higher than when he took office, and we're not even in the foothills of this government.
It is remarkable, isn't it? We're still waiting for that £300 sort of bonus, as it were, that we're supposed to be getting back. And I guess by the time we get it, prices will have gone up by about £1,000, so it won't actually make any difference at all. Well,
the SDP did a very good analysis on energy, actually, and they found that we have the highest energy costs in the industrialised world. It's amounted to 100 and something billion pounds a year, £3 trillion in total, which is the sum equivalent to our entire GDP. If we didn't have the highest energy costs in this country, our economy would be growing far stronger than it actually is. And that would, of course, would mean we've got money for infrastructure projects, for our public services. It's the high energy costs that are really crippling. It's the biggest, most ruinous economic policy of all time has been the energy policies, which are hampering us, tying both hands behind our back, when countries like India and China are soaring ahead not having these costs. It's sheer madness.
I don't understand how it's possible for a small little island like us, which has its own resources in the North Sea and has a relatively easy way of transmitting energy to homes in the country and a pretty good infrastructure, that we have the most expensive electricity in the world. It makes absolutely no sense. And there's a piece in the Telegraph saying the industry is actually being killed off, and now the people who are the biggest actual consumers of energy are small businesses like coffee shops, hairdressers, people who have got people plugging in iPhones all the time to charge them. This revolution of AI is only going to cause even more money to be spent on electricity.
And if you want to attract business into this country, having high energy costs is not great, is it?
It really isn't.
But also you've got Norway, wonderful socially democratic, progressive, left-wing Norway, drilling in the North Sea.
Yeah.
If they're willing to do it, why on earth can't we?
Selling their oil and gas to us.
Yeah.
Which we won't drill next door to them. One final one, we should have mentioned this earlier probably. Police watchdog facing questions about its independence. It's on the front page of the Times, after allegedly telling officers the inquiry into failings in the Nottingham attacks was politically motivated and they would escape serious censure. And they basically told the police in the case, this is all being driven by the families of the victims, and don't worry about it.
Yeah, I think this is
disgusting.
And, when the independent investigators need to have independent investigation, you know that our institutions are in a terrible position.
Yeah, you really do. Rafe, great to see you. Have a good weekend. Who knows what the news will bring over the course of the weekend, but you'll hear from us, of course, that the Labour Party conference kicks off on Sunday. Coming up, Kate Ferguson, political editor of The Sun on Sunday. She's got a brand new show out. We'll be talking to her all about that. She's been interviewing Robert Jenrick. Also, we'll bring you more on the digital ID scam and exactly what it is that Labour are up to, because I'm not sure they've even thought this one through. And is it really just a kind of a smokescreen to keep Morgan McSweeney off the front pages and out of the sort of common eye line? We shall see.